becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who goes to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are tuned into People Before Politics radio show. Hide that. There we go. I am AJ Woodson. This is episode 259. We're doing this online thing like everybody else because of this coronavirus situation. But the show must go on. I am joined with Dr. Bob, Robert Baskerville, aka Dr. Bob, aka Brooklyn Bob,
aka Bookworm Bob.
There you go. He's one of the last hounds of the Baskervilles. And we have special guest host Charles Stern from Red Blue Talk. He's joining us today.
Hi, AJ.
What's going on? Our guest, who's coming in about 15 minutes or so, New York State Senator Shelley Mayer. We're going to talk to her about a whole bunch of things. I think she's up for re-election this year. And we're going to have a nice little conversation with her for about an hour. And but how has everybody been maintaining during this coronavirus thing? How's everybody's families? Everybody's good?
Thank you for asking. Everybody's in one piece, AJ. Everybody's well, and we're trying to keep it that way.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Bob?
We're doing all right, AJ. As you know, since you're a close personal friend, we have experienced some tragedies as of late in my family. But it is the nature of life, and so we're trying to soldier on like everybody else.
Shout out to a few people already tuned in. Jeff Monroe is watching. Nicole Jones is watching. Ken Bright. Thank you, Ken. He said, nice goatee, AJ. Yeah, this is the Corona beard. I've been working on this since we were shut in. I'm not shaving until it's done. We're gonna see what it looks like. It's the Corona beard. Actually, I'm thinking about having a Corona beard contest. Matter of fact, let's talk about that now. So what I want everybody to do is I want everybody to send their pictures in of their Corona beard to blackwestchester@gmail.com. We're going to post them up, and we're going to let the viewers vote on who has the best Corona beard. We're going to have the Black Westchester Corona beard contest. So as you know, we're just going to do a couple of things just to have some fun. So yeah, we're going to have, and it was inspired by my man Cruz that owns In the Mix Radio. He looked like Willie Nelson. He got the long beard. Like, yo, you got to see it. It was crazy. I said, oh, we need to have a contest with everybody with their beard. So Johnny Button's watching. What's going on? As I said, we got the senator coming on. So what else? Now, Bob, I know I might as well give you a few minutes. If anybody follows Bob on Facebook, you always know when Trump is having a briefing because all of a sudden words just grow across the screen. That effing idiot, like,
Supposedly he's going to slow down on that because I think that everyone around him realizes public doesn't like it. People can't take it anymore.
Well, you know, one of the things I realized is so he lost his audience. He performs best for those rallies.
Mhm.
That's when he shines. He does his thing. He goes
Right.
off script. He feeds the
Right.
red meat.
Now you
And
can't do rallies.
now he doesn't have the rallies. So this is the only way for him to actually talk to people and reach the people now. Reaches his base. So you know he takes shots at the Democrats, shots at the Obama administration, shots at anybody with intelligence, scientists, doctors, basically everybody, every
Reporters,
other country, huh?
the reporters who are
Oh.
in the press room.
Yeah, he actually insulted the reporter. Asked him, so he said something that was irresponsible about, I guess, something about whatever. And the reporter said, "Do you think that's responsible to say that? You know, as the president? Oh, I'm the president of the United States, and you're fake news." Like that was his
Yeah.
response.
I'm the president of the United States and you're fake. It's very sad. The whole thing is terrible. I mean, I saw something on Twitter today. It was like a fake, it was like a little parody advertisement, and it showed like an asthma inhaler, but on
Oh
the
yes.
label of the inhaler, it said Lysol. It's like that. It's a sick thing. It's a sick thing.
Everybody
And
had a joke. Everybody had a joke about that. Everybody had. I must have seen 150 like jokes and memes about people with their Lysol. People putting Lysol and injected in their arms like heroin. Like you know, people just spraying it in their mouth. Just it was just like that was the most ridiculous. And you know what was irresponsible? When they asked him about it, he said, "Now I was just being sarcastic."
Sarcasm. It wasn't sarcasm.
The brief. First off, I think he meant it, but let's just say it was a joke. Those briefings are not a time for joking.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Those briefings are a time when we should be able to look to our leader for information, for reassurance, and what the government is going to do to make us safe. That's the conversation we should be having. And you know, it's no time for his sarcasm or putting out things that are not scientifically true. Like the one thing, what's the drug he keeps trying to push that he says everybody
hydrochloroquine.
Yes, like, there's no proof that works, and I understand some people got sick from using it, and somebody may have died or something because he said this works and you should use it. And what do you have to lose? That's obviously your life. That's his go-to. What do you have to lose?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if there's any good news coming out of this, it does appear that people have begun to figure it out, that even his base is diminishing because his poll numbers have been declining recently. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing him decompensate and behave in a more erratic way than in the past, because, you know, he wants to win that election in November. The clock is ticking. Things aren't going particularly well. The economy's having problems. The pandemic is not over by any stretch of the imagination. And he's looking at the clock and saying, hey, you know, I might run out of runway. So I think that's part of what you see.
Go ahead, Bob. I know you got a couple of words.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I just echo what you guys said. I think that there's evidence of the president's increased desperation because he realizes that his reelection is likely to turn on the economic performance of the nation during his tenure. And it seemed through no fault of his, he bears no fault in the actual genesis of the.
No, there's no accountability. Right. And Bob, not only that, I'll give you one more. It's very, very clear. I mean, I've heard it now on ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, NPR. It's very clear that there was a solid month, beginning in late January, ending in late February, where the White House knew about it and they did nothing. And to a degree, that's why things have gotten as out of control as they are.
I mean,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that this is emblematic of the president's larger distrust in the intelligence gathering agencies broadly defined that are one of the main functions of the federal government. Not only is there evidence that the CDC and other health agencies were aware, even before the start of the new year, that there was some sort of outbreak, and its size and severity was likely being downplayed by China. But also, I've read reports that suggest that some of our intelligence agencies proper had wind of problems afoot in China. And because the president has not just distrust of the intelligence agencies narrowly defined, but also I think just scientific expertise more generally, it's not surprising that he should try to essentially understate the possible severity because he didn't want to do anything to take away momentum from what he thought was his going to be a successful campaign. I do want to add that the broader problem is that this has been part of the Republican electoral playbook for several decades now. The attack on science that the Republican Party and its corporate allies have been waging for decades, whether it be in the area of scientific evidence regarding first the dangers of smoking, then consumer products, above all else, the skepticism that they displayed early on towards some of Ralph Nader's findings, then towards climate science. PBS Frontline's running a great documentary on the way that the corporate sector, the oil industry, tried to conceal the findings from its own scientists about the likely harms of carbon emissions. It's entitled Climate of Doubt. I'd encourage people to watch it. So really what we have now is the nation is in the stranglehold. The Republican Party is in the stranglehold of a bunch of do nothing, know nothing leaders who would prefer to sort of place their faith in the free market or in religion, and both certainly religion has its place in our life, but we cannot substitute faith in God for actual facts that God has endowed us with a rational faculties to figure out. That's
right.
That's
well, one of the things, sorry to interrupt, one of the things that's most important that people who go to church, that religious, the God does not require you to leave your brains at the door when you walk into the building. He is giving you common sense for a reason. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, and I studied theology. I took some classes in theology, which are like first year seminary classes at my old church. And they always tried to pit science and religion against each other. And the old theologians and the old scientists, they were Christian. You know what I'm saying? And they believe that they two run together. It's right. Everybody else who tried to take it and make it separate. So real quick, a couple of comments. Keith Nixon said, "What's up, Bob?"
Hey, Keith, what's happening, man? I'm sorry. Good to see you, brother. You said hello last time, and I wanted to shout you out, man. So shout out to you, brother. And my man Ed, I know Ed's gonna sign on soon.
Shout out to Cookie Alexander Campbell. She said, "Good evening." Louise Cherico said, "Hi, everybody." Harry Williams Lawson III, shout out to him. And Ken Bright, when we talk about the Corona Beard Contest, he said, "I don't qualify." So, the senator should actually be calling in soon, tuning in soon. But yeah, oh, actually, you are. Wait, let me see. Hold on. Okay, yeah, because I didn't see your box come up yet. I didn't see. I hit there. I see you now. I see you now. So we're gonna it's 6:15. We're gonna get you in right now.
He's in the lobby.
Show. There we go. And your name right there. So first off, you've been to the studio before. We have a bunch of audio stuff and applause buttons and stuff. I don't have that here, so we just want to give you a manual of applause.
We'll make do. Don't take it.
Yes. But welcome back to the show.
Pleasure.
Now you're up. All the Senate seats, they're up this year, right?
Senate and Assembly, all of us are up. Some people have primaries that would be earlier. I have an opponent who's running on the Republican and conservative line.
Right.
But so that's in November. But yes, we're all up, and some of us have opponents, like myself. I didn't think I would, but I do. So that I take it seriously and going to run hard.
But no Democratic primary.
No, I don't have a primary opponent.
So just, I'm not sure if you met Bob Bashful, Dr. Bob, last time you were on.
Yes.
And we have our guest.
Good evening, Senator.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Everyone calls me Shelley.
Yes, Shelley. Okay. Nice to see you.
And we have our guest host, Charles Stern from Red Blue Talk. He's guest hosting with us today.
Pleasure.
Hello,
Nice
Senator. How do you do?
And Damon K. Jones, he's working. He could not be here. And Lorraine Jones is not on. Lorraine Lopez, I'm sorry, is not on today. So I want to give her a shout out. I didn't give her a shout out yet. Shout out to Lorraine.
Yes.
Yes. She's been doing, I want to give her a shout out too, because she posted something recently that had to do with undocumented people that were undocumented being able to get testing.
Right.
And they needed a photo ID and they don't have it. And she posted something on Facebook.
But not to cut you off, but I saw that too. And I called Senator Stewart Cousins in her district and asked her to confirm with the state what the rule was, because Lorraine had a very good point. You know, the whole point of having it there, and credit to Andrea because she fought to get it in Southwest Yonkers. And, you know, I used to represent that part of the city when I was in the assembly, and I forever feel very loyal to Southwest Yonkers. But they checked with the governor's office, and you do not have to have a ID that proves you're a citizen. You can have a utility bill. You can have
as your address, right? Yeah,
something in your address, or something from your home country, like from Ecuador, as long as you have something that shows, so they can track who they have and follow you. So, but she raised a good point, but I think it's not a disqualifier. And in fact, we have to test as many people as we can. Today, I spent, part of the day in Portchester, which is in my district, where it's again, a disproportionate impact of this virus because of the concentration of the Latino community there. And so we have to make sure everybody gets a test, but Andrea fought for that and to get a testing site in Mount Vernon, because we know that this virus is really just having such a terrible impact on the communities of color.
Actually, and I just wanted to give her, a shout out because she pointed this out, and within hours she's heard from Senator Stewart Cousins' office. She's heard from the county legislators in her district.
Yep.
She's heard from the Ken Jenkins. She's heard from everybody, and they came to address and inform. And then she just put out today a revised, updated with everybody who called her and what they said and reported that. So I want to give her a shout. You actually got a comment. Cookie Alexander Campbell says, "Hi, Senator. Hope you remember me. We were honored together at the YWCA at the Spirit of the Women. 5 women who shattered the glass ceiling in Westchester County."
Yes, I do remember. That was a wonderful, wonderful night. One of the wonderful things is I have a whole new district, even though I still have Yonkers, but I miss having the west side of Yonkers, the YW, the YM, really things that I cared about and fought about. Now I'm trying to give those same kind of energy in White Plains, New Rochelle, and in Yonkers for a broader community. But yes, I remember that. I'm very loyal to that YWCA. That's a beautiful place, and the YM, both of them.
And also, Dr. Tahira Dupree Chase, Greenberg superintendent. She said, "Greetings, Senator." And Ken Bright from Mount Vernon, he said, "Hello, Shelley." So
that's nice.
You're getting a lot of shout outs. And Cookie Alexander Campbell said, "Thank you, Senator." So
that's
want
so
to get
nice.
all of this.
Yes,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
terrific. There's a beautiful fabric of in Yonkers particularly, and certainly in a lot of Westchester, where people have their ups and downs and their skirmishes and all that. But at the end of the day, the commitment to community is great, and if
Right.
we put that ahead of ego, if we put that ahead of all the other stuff we deal with, like right now, we're in this huge crisis, and the impact of this crisis on our urban communities is so great. We just have to focus on that. As I say, I see it in Yonkers. I see it in certainly in the central part of New Rochelle, where Andrea also is getting a new testing site down in central part of New Rochelle off Lincoln Avenue, hopefully. And
Right.
so we are fighting for the resources to be better placed where the need is greatest.
Well, Senator, I can tell you that we especially appreciate you coming on air with us this evening to talk about, amongst other things, about the way proposed cuts to the education budget
Yep.
are likely to influence our ability to respond to the crisis, because not only is it a public health crisis, which we're dealing with immediately, but over the long run, our ability to recover economically is going to be greatly affected by state policy, including funding decisions, painful funding decisions. I think that all of us here do recognize have to be made, but nevertheless have caused concerns. I have my CUNY sign behind me.
Yes.
I'm a professor, an adjunct professor in the city university system, and I can tell you that a firestorm of discussion was sparked within the past 12 or so hours after announcements from leading state officials, including the governor, about the size, magnitude of proposed cuts. So I'm going to remove my sign now because I don't want to give the impression.
Well, before you do, Alex Harrison said, Dr. Bob, which school do you teach at? I go to the College of Staten Island.
I teach at Bronx Community College, which has been my home institution. Not only am I a professor, currently a professor, not only have I served as a staff member for student support services, but I'm also an alum of the college. I'm a member of the class of 1992, and I teach at Lehman College in the sociology.
Can I just mention something about the higher ed before we talk about lower ed? Is that okay?
Absolutely, please.
Oh, I see you have your Buffalo t-shirt on.
Buffalo Soldiers.
Aha. Yes, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, the Buffalo Soldiers, yeah.
Yes, I know that. I know that thing. So I want you to know that Senator Toby Stavisky, who's the chair of higher ed in the Senate, and I co-authored with Senator John Liu, who's chair of the Committee on New York City Schools, and I'm the chair of the Education Committee, a letter signed by many of my colleagues to our entire congressional delegation and the Senate, asking for money for the state and the cities and towns and villages. 2, asking for money for K through 12 in the next stimulus, and 3, asking for higher ed money. We know that CUNY and SUNY are at the top of our list, and they're a great, first place we had to fight to get the best we could in this budget, which wasn't good enough, but that's because we had a $10 billion gap at the time we adopted it. Now the governor says there's more to cut, and we are very, very concerned about that. And I have a proposal on the table to tax people who earn $5 million or more because of the disproportionate sacrifice through the coronavirus. That I was never a big tax person, but in this coronavirus, the people at the middle and on the bottom are doing so much more sacrifice than those at the top. And for now, when we need money, in addition to getting money from the feds, I'm suggesting we should have a 1-year tax on the highest income earners. But it's really to be directed to education, K through 12 and higher ed, and particularly SUNY and CUNY. We need to invest in them.
Senator, I have some questions because I had an opportunity to read your note about that proposal. And why do you think that will work? Because if I had a family income over $5 million and that proposal came along, you know what I do? I call my attorney and say, those other 2 houses I have, make me a permanent resident in one of those other places.
Well, that's been,
and then you'll lose that tax revenue forever.
I know, and that's been the common theme of rejection to these ideas over time. And that's one of the reasons I haven't been a big fan. In fact, I have not been a supporter of the higher income tax above, for example, $1 million. But it was in the context of coronavirus, and I saw it firsthand in my district. Thousands of people in my district, in our community, have lost their job. They are really having trouble with unemployment. I just would say, we can talk about it's better, but it's not good enough. The system, they have no income, or they're working because they have to be working. And people who earn $5 million is not only earning it from their job, it's also earning it from investment income. But basically, it's not their asset. It's not that the house is worth $5 million, and God bless them, they got a house worth $5 million. But they're earning this. And I'm saying for 1 year, while the state is having this, and it's not the central focus. The central focus is getting money out of Washington because the state doesn't have any money. But we ought to ensure we build in some revenue to do some of the things we need to do. Otherwise, we are going to lay off teachers in every district, Mount Vernon, Greenberg, Yonkers, every district. And we are going to not be able to bring kids back to the place. I understand this risk of people moving. It's out there. I think a lot of people like living in New York who are high income earners. There are some number, but someone has to do the analysis and show me that and there is an analysis that this 5 million, just bumping up the tax rate at 5 million is a way to earn a modest amount more for a short time. Yes, I know this threat for a long time, but it's got to be quantified before it's real.
So I need to understand. I want to double click a little bit on that. You're bringing up all these things. Well, we'll have to fire teachers if we don't get the revenue, and we can't backfill, and we can't do this, we can't do that, and we need the federal government to bail us out. Well, there's going to be a lot of municipalities and a lot of states all over America asking for some type of assistance to backfill the shortfalls that are resulting from loss of sales tax revenue and all the other catastrophic financial losses that are taking place as a result of the pandemic. What I'm not hearing is what's different, because this has now happened twice in 15 years where the states are so broke that they have to go to the federal government and say, help us out. Well, money doesn't grow on trees in Washington either. And the federal government could run out of money after a couple of these bailouts. And that money doesn't come from no place. That comes from federal income tax, which we also pay. So I guess what I'm getting at here, Senator, is there's some point at which you spend a lot of time in Albany and have for a long time. What are the conversations like in the back room? Is anybody saying it's time to restructure?
Yes.
Is anybody saying property owners can't take it anymore? Is
Yes,
anybody saying, no, we got to do something different?
Let me just say, I have said we cannot burden property taxpayers anymore. I think I have the highest property taxes in my district than anyone in the state. We can't do it on the backs. A fairer way to fund education is not to base it on property tax wealth, in my opinion. Is ultimately to have it based in the state and pay it out based on need and population. That would be, so there are conversations.
Okay.
And I went around the state before coronavirus, meeting with districts all over about sort of how to do better in distributing the money, how to be fair. You ask, is anybody sort of saying, let's do it differently? Yes, I'm very much concerned about finding more creative ways to be efficient and to be economical.
Okay.
And not to do it on the backs of property taxpayers.
I understand that. I hear you saying that, but then I also hear you saying the exact same things that was been going on here for the last 50 years.
But I think
which is, let's ask for money from the federal government. They won't give it to us. And then we'll say, look, people, we tried to get the money from the federal government, but we can't. So unless you backfill this with property taxes, we're going to have to fire teachers. You don't want to do that, do you?
Well,
it sounds like business as usual.
No, it really isn't. It really isn't. For the last few years, we have reduced certain tax rates in Albany since I've been there. We imposed a permanent property tax cap to limit the ability of school districts and municipalities to raise property taxes, recognizing it was a problem. We have limited the growth of state government. This year, what happened is we had a coronavirus. We had a disaster like nobody could imagine in New York State. And because of it, the state is $10 billion less in anticipated tax revenues. This is not like any other year. I've been in and out of Albany for many years. There was never all of a sudden. Yes, there was a 2007, 8, 9 recession.
Right.
We didn't get much from the federal government.
Agreed.
We cut. And I'm not opposed to cutting when we have to. We did cut in the last budget, by the way. The reason education didn't get cut is because we were able to use the federal stimulus bill that was done to avoid cuts. But I just would point out that districts, if you flat fund them from last year to this year, which is what we did not increase anyone's aid because we didn't have any more money. The normal growth of expenditures in a school district means that if you just do it year to year even, you either are going to have to reduce costs by layoffs. It's just sort of basic, and so I'm not threatening anything other than it's very rational. But look, I appreciate that people think any change of tax structure or any dependence on the federal government is politics as usual. I really don't think it is, and I think for someone like myself who spends every day dealing with individuals who are laid off, trying to get unemployment, or small businesses that have lost everything, trying to help them get that PPP out of the last stimulus. I don't think this is a different day and it's a different problem. But
we got a couple of comments. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
We got a couple of quick comments. Dr. Chase said, thank you, Senator, for your support in public education. And we had an earlier question from Alex Harrison, who said the biggest protection needs to go to the Excelsior Scholarship.
Oh,
I'm not familiar
yes.
with what that is. So would you like to speak on that?
Yeah, sure. That was a proposal that the governor had to basically allow anyone below a certain income level to be able to go to a SUNY school tuition free. It's not a perfect program. I don't think it's been as successful as it was originally pegged to be. But it exists out there as a way basically for families. I forget the upper income cutoff, but it's higher income than you would think in the old days to allow people to get the tuition paid for as long as they agree to remain in New York State for a number of years after graduation. Again, it hasn't worked perfectly, but people are worried about it being either reduced or modified so they're no longer eligible. And I suspect, I'm looking at the comments of Alex Harrison, that is a concern of people that it might be cut.
Okay. And also we had Luis Cherico in Greenberg. She said, we are only asking for a small percentage of the tax break for the rich back for 1 year. Tax them, nobody will leave. And Dr. Chase followed that up with saying we need the resources to address the academic losses as well as to ensure social/emotional support for children. This is especially true for districts with high, free, and reduced rate and children of color. Thank you again, Senator, for your advocacy.
That's nice. Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, I am,
Right.
If you're the education chair, your job is to speak up on behalf of kids, and that's what I do.
So here's
Absolutely.
what I'm saying. So Dr. Chase is alluding to high needs kids
Yeah.
in districts with high levels of Title I funding. And that is one significant way in which the federal Department of Education actually makes an impact in places like New York. But statewide, New York spends more on education per child than any other state in the United States of America. High school graduation rate, we're number 40. That was going on before the pandemic. So I guess a rational question, Senator, is, and I'm directing this in your role as education chair, what's going to be different? What is going to be different? I heard the mayor of New York this morning in his press conference talking about, we don't just want New York City to recover from this pandemic. We want something transformative to take place because things weren't perfect before the pandemic. And I heard that, frankly, the governor said something similar in his address at 11:30 this morning. He was saying, we need to come back and we need to be stronger than we were before. again, alluding to this concept of transformation. But we had 700 school districts in 2007 before that crisis, which you mentioned a minute ago, happened. We still have 700 school districts. At what point, again, I'm asking in good faith, when you're talking to the super smartest people in New York about education, I know you have access to them. Are any of them saying maybe we don't need 700 school districts?
Yes, absolutely. And I have been a proponent of finding effective ways to merge either districts or back office of districts. You know, particularly there's many school districts with declining enrollment, particularly in northern New York and in western New York outside of the cities. And I have a bill to induce districts to merge. It's not easy politically, as you can imagine. I've worked with my Republican counterpart on the committee, Senator Betty Little, who's from the North Country. We both want to create additional incentives for districts to find ways to either merge directly or merge back offices. There's no reason we need so many districts with declining enrollment, and we have districts that are too small to make it work for the kids. So,
well, Senator, that's the North Country. Here in the South Country, Westchester County has 40 school districts.
I know.
40. I mean, and a lot of them are led by superintendents who are making $200,000, $300,000, and $400,000 a year. What's it called? Nassau County's got 55 school districts.
Yeah. No.
When is it time? When is it time? What level of economic crisis is it going to take to talk about having fewer school districts, fewer superintendents, fewer administrators, and putting some more of that money back into the classroom where it can actually help kids?
Well, I think, first place, I've been chair for a year, and I walked into a somewhat of a challenge, to say the least. I spent my last year trying to focus on how to make funding more equitable between districts. That was step one. We were going to address that this year. Step two is to address some of these bigger structural problems. You can do one thing at a time while you're trying to do it. I'm very prepared to. We had roundtables in Nassau and in Yonkers to address suburban districts. And I don't think there's any question we need to make some structural changes in education. It would be helpful to have the federal government and the U.S. Department of Education as much a partner as they ought to be. The New York State Department of Education, with its new Chancellor, Betty Rosa, is a fantastic partner with us. We work and talk together all the time. But I don't disagree with you. We need structural change. But right now we have a problem. One, this is the situation we're in. We've got kids in school or kids at home learning. That is what we have to deal with right now. And secondly, once we get back into the classroom, we're going to have additional complicating factors because kids have been home trying to learn virtually. And, most teachers have done a very good job in districts dealing with it. But we got some short-term challenges. So I'm not adverse to talking about structural change. Right now, respectfully, I'm focused on what is happening in my district, whether it's in Bedford, Armonk, some of the most affluent parts of Westchester, and then in Yonkers and, obviously I have White Plains and New Rochelle, and Portchester, which have many challenges. So we got the long term, we got the short term. This is a crisis. I'm focused on the short term for the moment.
I do want to add.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I want to broaden the historical perspective because I have to say, Charles, that I think that your narrow focus on the tax burden that would possibly be shouldered by the middle class residents of New York State really needs to be broadened in terms of the established strategies for responding to an economic crisis of the kind that the nation is getting ready to confront. And already we're seeing that there's been a precipitous drop in employment rates. Yeah. And so that already, I think the latest rates were about at 16%, forecast by some would have unemployment rates increase at least to the same rates that we saw during the Great Depression, if not into the 30% range. And it's been well established historically that the appropriate response in a time of economic crisis, when ordinary mechanisms of price and demand do not hold, that federal and state governments must play the role as the employer of last resort that they must engage in deficit spending in order to ensure that people have gainful employment and that the normal market mechanisms will even work. Should the New York State and federal governments actually take the kind of advice that you seem to be offering here, which is business as usual advice, by the way. It's a surefire recipe for an economic catastrophe that we will not recover from. The senator is absolutely right that we need to see an increase on tax rates back to historical highs that were established after the Great Depression and for the more than 40 or so years during which New York State and the U.S. government, the U.S. economy had a rate of economic growth that was the envy of the world. So that's the first thing. Business as usual is a continued attack on public investment right now. When we put the U.S. performance in response to the crisis into an international comparative perspective, we must conclude that the United States has fared so poorly precisely because of our historical underinvestment in the public sector, including our hospitals. Should we decide that we're going to allow local municipalities and education districts to go belly up, you're going to have massive unemployment. This gives me an opportunity to note that in terms of the actual employment rates in the main sectors of New York State, the education, health, and sectors comprise more than 27%. More than 27% of all employed persons in New York State. We cannot afford to take advice which insists that somehow or the other, for reasons that are not clear to me, reasons that are not at all clear, that somehow or the other rich people are exempt from having higher tax rates. 40, 50 years ago, we had high tax rates and we should return to those rates. As a matter of fact, in the 1990s, when I was a student at Bronx Community College, we waged a weeks-long protest precise against Andrew Cuomo's father, Mario Cuomo, because he started the kind of draconian budget cuts that have led to the diminution of the public sector, including a decline in the quality of our primary and secondary education. I have to say, as I am a very well-educated man, I'm carrying an albatross of student loans around my neck of over 100,000, and the City University of New York and the SUNY, and matter of fact, all the private schools can no longer afford to continue to try to balance the back of budgets on adjuncts and other people who, by historical comparison standards, are underpaid. I am a part-time worker, and this is, I cannot even believe. Well, Charles, you're going to forgive me because I'm not going to allow myself to get too impassioned. I know we speak in a principled manner, but
so let me.
We need to really seriously consider whether or not, in a moment of crisis, we need to insist that somehow the other minimal tax rates are going to work to the advantage of New York State and the U.S. society as a whole. I think that is misguided advice, to say the least.
So I'm gonna let the senator have the last word in that, and then we're gonna move on to other topics. If you want to comment on any of this, or if you want to,
here's what I would say: we are, in my opinion, at an incredibly unique moment. We haven't been in it before. I don't think this is politics as usual. This is crisis, total crisis across the board, not just in schools, in the economy. You know, one of the both the blessings and the curses of being an elected official is you talk to real people who are just on the verge of incredible struggle now. And then there are other people who have far less struggle. And our job is to help people through, to find a path, to fight for policies that are going to help our economy recover and ensure public safety. So to me, this is never a moment. This could never be compared to politics as usual. This is nothing like anything else. Thousands of people dying in New York, thousands of people out of job, the jobless rate like you just suggested. we have to just step up and do difficult things. I'm prepared to do it. There's consequences that comes with the job. So I feel quite comfortable with my position. I appreciate that people may disagree, but I'm going to proceed with it.
I want to actually we went in reverse. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the coronavirus and all that because I knew the education part was going to be a heated type of conversation. So first off, for everybody, you're the state senator of the 37th district.
Right.
What is the 37th district? What does that consist of? Just so
well, all the districts are very what they call gerrymandered.
right.
It doesn't make any sense. So McLean Avenue in Yonkers on the Bronx border, then up East Yonkers and then Eastchester, Tuckahoe, Bronxville, over to the whole Sound Shore, Larchmont, Mamaroneck, Rye, Portchester. Then it also goes the south side of New Rochelle, the north side of New Rochelle, not the center, not where I was talking about Lincoln Avenue, downtown Main Street. No, it's the south side over there on Boston Post Road, the north side over where the coronavirus started, really.
Waikiki,
shopping center, yep. Then you go north from there, and as I say, besides the Sound Shore, you go to the south side of White Plains, the north side of White Plains, Lake Avenue. Then you go Harrison, West Harrison, all the way up to North Castle, which is Armonk, and Bedford.
It's like a district in the shape of an amoeba.
Yeah, no, it's a serpent. You're exactly right. It's the craziest thing. I live in Yonkers, in East Yonkers. It takes me about 45 minutes to drive to the northern part of my district. And, one of the things, not to be unduly partisan, is that we need better lines. It doesn't make sense.
Well,
that
you have 40 friends now in the state Senate.
But
when are you going to do it?
Well, I hope we are, but we're not going to do it until after the next census. But the point is, it doesn't serve Yonkers, New Rochelle, and White Plains to share a senator. They're not that, it makes more sense to have one person who speaks with one voice. Even though, Andre and I are friends and we have a great working relationship, it works out very well, but it doesn't make sense institutionally. We should have contiguous districts that make sense, not based on politics. They built this district because they thought a Republican could beat George Latimer. That's why they drew it this way. And then George won.
And it worked. It worked for a while.
Well, not once George got there. They created new districts and they redrew this line to defeat George. It didn't work. And then it didn't work for me either last time. But, I'm running again. So it doesn't make sense. But that's where my district is. It's very diverse in terms of income, ethnicity. I have some of the most affluent people in America living in Bedford. And then I have some, I have all of Portchester and a good deal of Yonkers and a lot of middle-class people. It's a very diverse district. It makes it challenging, interesting.
Now, what I wanted to start, the show talking about this whole coronavirus pandemic, how it's affecting your district, what things are y'all doing on a state level to, and what information can you give us, any updates or anything on what's going on?
Well, so really, I would say we spend all of my staff every day dealing with constituents on several issues. The first is unemployment insurance. The entire economy, really, of most of Westchester, particularly small businesses, restaurants, bars, the whole entertainment, and then all of New York City, these things closing down cause a tremendous ripple in my district and throughout all of my colleagues' districts. So every day I deal with people who have applied for unemployment, didn't get it, or they applied for what is called pandemic adjustment assistance that was given by the federal stimulus bill, which is money for people in the gig economy or self-employed, which we don't have under traditional New York unemployment. All of these are not working well enough. One, we have millions of people, so many more people applying. The system is out of date. The governor has said they put 1,000 people in there. They've created several improvements. But honestly, every day I deal with people who are desperate for paycheck or money to feed their family or make their car note. So that's one set of issues. Secondly, small businesses that wanted to apply for the PPP, the grant that was in the last stimulus bill, many of whom applied and didn't get it at all. And the system did not work well enough. It favored really bigger entities, including some that were publicly traded, but little bars and restaurants, little shops, most of them did not get it in the last go round. So we tried to help deal with that. We spoke to our congressional representatives every day. Thirdly, people at risk of being evicted or can't make their mortgage payment. You know, the governor, there is a moratorium for 3 months on evictions, commercial or residential, but people still owe the money. So there's a number of legislative proposals out there dealing with forgiving or creating other ways to deal with the inability of people to pay rent without putting the landlords at risk of not being able to make their property tax payments. So I'm dealing with the constituent part. And on the policy stuff, I am, again, fighting and spearheading work in Washington to get money for education and to help the towns and villages that I represent, which have lost their tax revenue, sales tax and property tax probably as well, because people won't be able to pay. I'm also working on trying to get specific education money for lower education and higher education in the next federal stimulus bill. The Title I that we discussed earlier, and some money for SUNY and CUNY and for the private schools, as was in the prior bill.
So, Senator,
Yeah.
you know, it's a rational time to ask because it's a time of transformation. You said it's a time of crisis. You mentioned that you've got Portchester
Yeah.
in your district.
Yeah.
Is Rye Brook in your district? Yes. So Rye Brook is in your district. In Portchester, I might be off a little. They're spending $19,000 a child on education. In Rye Brook, the number's north of $27,000 a year. Yeah. It's a glittering, grotesque inequality.
Agreed.
Is it time to fix that?
Yes. And
I want go ahead. I want to answer this, and then I want to deal some more with coronavirus before we deal with it.
Well, yes. I mean, in my opinion, the long-term way to deal with that inequity, and the same thing exists between Yonkers and Tuckahoe and Bronxville and other schools, is to move the state towards funding from a state level and rather than reliance on property tax wealth, because property tax wealth is the way we have basically, in some places, 66%.
Is there an appetite in the state legislature to do that?
I think there's an appetite in the legislature to begin to move towards that. And in fact, the regents proposed a 3-year study of revisiting foundation aid, which came from 2007, and I'm in favor of reviewing our funding methodology and principles and moving to a more equitable, just what you described. And I know, as someone who represented Yonkers all those years in the assembly and still fights for Yonkers schools, until we fix it, it's a structural problem that is unjust to the kids and doesn't work well for the state as a whole. So I agree with you about that.
I wanted to ask you, dealing with the whole corona thing, the COVID-19 testing.
Yeah.
Testing has been a big issue. I know they just opened up a new testing place with St. Joseph's in Yonkers.
At the St. John's that's on Ashburton.
Right. But I know there's been a problem being tested, people getting tests, and I know that the numbers that they throw out are probably very low because many people were never tested. People are having problems with that. Can you speak about the testing, what the state is doing on that level to make that easier and all that?
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because at the beginning of this, the number one constituent complaint we got was people who wanted tests and couldn't get tests. And
right.
It still is a real problem. And that's why we have to fight for these tests in places where there is this prevalence of the incidence of coronavirus. Southwest Yonkers, Mount Vernon, now we're going to have one in central New Rochelle, as well as in places in the city. We're having new ones in the Bronx and in Brooklyn, outside of Manhattan. We need more testing. You may have seen the governor in the last few days has said that he's going to authorize regular drugstores to be able to administer the test first to first responders and others who are essential workers. So people are going to work every day and have to go to work, and ultimately to expand that. So I do think there's a real problem is that we don't seem to have a testing system that works nationally. And so every state and the governor, to his credit, is pushing on this testing. And I think we need much greater access to testing to know how widespread the virus is. So I am for much greater access to testing. I wish someone could really explain why we don't have the swabs and the other, chemical reagents that are needed. It's quite remarkable to me that this country is not prepared to test big enough and scale enough. But the governor is pushing towards testing in drugstores, which I think is a very good development.
Senator, is there anything specific?
Hold on. One of our Greenberg listeners was asking. I know we have in Mount Vernon, we have one.
Yes.
Most of them are drive-through testing areas, and in the areas like where I live on the south side of Mount Vernon, a lot of people don't have cars, and I know the health center is a walk-up testing area. Do we have any more, like in your district? Do we have any walk-up testing locations?
Well, so the one in Mount Vernon and the one in Yonkers are for walk-in. You don't have to drive. That was one of the things.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you walk up, you still need a doctor's prescription for the test.
Not a doctor's prescription. You have to call the state hotline and make
an appointment.
It doesn't require that. You have to call the hotline and get an appointment, and so that you're put into the system. Yes, we need more walk-ups, and that's what we're going to have. The south side of Mount Vernon should be a walk-up. The south side of Yonkers should be a walk-up. The new one that we just got agreed to, the governor agreed to do in New Rochelle should be a walk-up. And I raised today the possibility, I'm reaching out to the mayor of Portchester. We may need a walk-up in Portchester. That has a very high incidence, and it's a dense area there along Westchester Avenue where people are living.
Senator, there's a specific. Oh, I'm sorry.
Bob's up next. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I do want to just firstly note that another reason why we should be especially concerned about reductions to aid to our public education sector, especially at the primary, secondary level, is because they serve a dual function, not only to educate students, but also, as we would say in class, as a big babysitting factory. And we're all well aware that we're not going to be able to restart our economy if parents who work during typical 9 to 5 hours do not have a safe, reliable place to send their kids. So this is a major impediment to any kind of effort to resume economic activity so that we don't find ourselves stuck in perpetual economic stagnation. I also wanted to use the opportunity to ask a question, Senator, whether or not New York State, in partnership with the federal government, will have a robust enough testing regime so that parents will feel confident that their kids will be safe come September to return to school. I was just talking with a friend of mine who is a proprietor of an after-school program about how things are going to shape up in the fall. And he expressed a reluctance that I'm hearing from many parents about returning kids to school if we're not doing widespread testing. And I want to hear what we're going to be doing about that, or else I'm not sure there's going to be sufficient confidence.
Well, Dr. Hubb, I think that applies both to schools and the workplace. Mm-hmm. And I think the governor referenced that today. You need people to feel confident that going back to work is going to be safe, and sending their kids to school will be safe. We're going to have to take steps through testing, through widespread, cleaning at a much greater level than we traditionally have done. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that we do have enough time to plan for that. I mean, it depends on when they reopen, but I'm hopeful about that. I just want to comment on your point when you call babysitting, and some people get very offended. But it's someone I'm not offended. I have been.
Yeah, Bob, teachers don't like that.
I know.
Like that.
I'm sorry.
but the thing is, I've been a big advocate on childcare and after school my entire career. That is like any working family knows that school is education plus a place for your kid to go. That is a very positive environment on the whole, not perfect. that kids have a day there and you can work and make a living. And all of a sudden, everyone cared about childcare and feeding kids as if that was a new thing. But working parents and particularly working mothers have known for years, schools are a place you could get fed and you could get taken care of in a safe environment, comes home socially more adept to handle the world. So we absolutely need to have those elements built in, hopefully, so that the economy can resume. And I think, I want to give the governor credit. He and I've had many disagreements over the years. I think he has shown extraordinary leadership. He stepped up when there was a vacuum. He talked cleanly and clearly. He explained himself. He takes questions. It's not personal. It's in great contrast to the president. Whatever your politics are, the guy acts like a leader in a time of crisis, and I think he deserves credit for that.
Absolutely. We have
Yeah,
another question from one of our other guest co-hosts, Brenda L. Crump. She said, "I am concerned about our elderly and my daughter, one who has tested positive, that works at a nursing home. Please ask the senator to speak to nursing homes, residents, and staff that care for the residents not having significant PPEs." And I would also extend that to healthcare workers all over. One of the biggest complaints is, not enough PPEs and having the tools to protect themselves while they care for the people.
Well,
Westchester has a lot of nursing homes.
yes.
Right.
And the issue of nursing homes is a very serious one. And, in the last few days, the governor and the executive have proposed certain actions. But one, there has been a problem with PPE in nursing homes. I think there was at the beginning a tremendous emphasis on hospitals, and other healthcare providers were sort of in a second tier, and that ought not to have been. And now we know that such a large percentage of death and illness is occurring both in nursing homes and assisted care. So we're worried about the staff there, and they need PPE. We have a daily call with the governor's office every day at 5:30 for the last 6 weeks, and we bring up specific places we hear about where they need PPE, whether it's a hospital, a nursing home, a group home, which I've been going to them. There's a whole range of people, but for all of the staff that work in nursing homes, many of whom are women of color who are not paid a lot, and yet they go to work. They're very devoted to the people on the whole, the residents they take care of. We haven't done well enough by them. And we also have, I think, not done well enough by the residents. So we have to change it. I think the new developments are good ones. They are strict. I know the nursing home industry is upset about them, but it turns out a preponderance of these deaths, a significant proportion, is occurring, and understandably so, in nursing homes where people already are compromised and sick, and the staff is so vulnerable and had to go to work. So Brenda, I get that. I will look at the petition, and I appreciate that you cited Psalms. Cast me not off in the time of old age. Forsake me not when my strength failed. This is really, there is some moment here for thinking back on sort of our basic values.
Absolutely.
And the idea that you can't go visit your mother, your grandmother, grandmother, that's a killer to me.
I personally, my mother, I moved back. I was in Atlanta. I moved back up here in 2014 to take care of my mother who had stage 4 cancer. And I was with her every day, whether it was the hospital, the rehabs, to get her back home and all that. And I can't imagine.
Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed, all of the places she was at, the different hospitals, they're all overworked and understaffed. And even with me being there every day, there were still things falling through the gaps. For those people that don't have family members to visit them, they were not even getting the attention. I would have to speak up for other people that were in a hall, in a couple of rooms from her. So I can't imagine not being there at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They probably would have had to arrest me to keep me out, actually, to be honest. But so I feel for all the people. I do have a comment from Barry McGooey, the head of the Yonkers Fire Union.
Yeah.
He said, "Thank you, Shelley, Senator Shelley Mayer, for helping the Yonkers Fire Department get critically needed PPE several weeks ago. We are fine now, but when we let her know a few weeks ago we were critically short. She got right on it and contacted
That's
the
great.
county exec and governor's office, and we had the needed PPE the next day. So he
Great
wanted
story.
to give you a shout out.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
we do get, people call. I was on the phone tonight about a patient, to the point you just made, AJ, in a hospital who needs an advocate. And when you don't have
Right.
someone there, because
Right.
you can't have that, then you need like people like me to call. Now, that's not, in a perfect world, you shouldn't have to go to your senator to call somebody who works for a hospital to go in.
Right.
But we're not in a perfect world. And we are out there really every day, and we are going back and calling the people who have called us and said, did anything happen as a result of our intervention? Sometimes it doesn't, and it's very disappointing, but we try. We're out there sort of battling away on behalf of individuals, and and working, obviously, we're not in fights. We're just trying to push people in the right direction.
Right. Because there was a point where my mother could not, like you said, advocate for herself, and I had to make those decisions. But I had to be there to make those decisions, and I
Right.
was able to get her wherever she needed because I was there. So, and I saw what happened to those who didn't have one there, and now not being able to be there, that has to be hard. And I just want to shout out all those families. I can't imagine what they're going through. We talked about testing.
AJ, I had an education question that's also a coronavirus question.
Okay, I need to be on Corona because we were supposed to do the Corona
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
and we skipped it.
Absolutely. So, Senator, my question has to do with like what the timetable might look like for schools and reopening schools, because the governor today alluded to, really nothing's changing between now and May 15th. Then there'll be some decision making about whether it's appropriate to move forward based upon the guidelines and 14 days of declining hospitalizations, all that stuff, which he's been saying repeatedly, which is why I'm able to, recite it to you.
Me too.
And you're on those weekly or daily calls with the governor. There's a lot of remote learning going on. I gather that the teachers have done, a great job. I know specific teachers that I've spoken to, and they're figuring out how to do a lesson plan using Zoom or using Google Classroom. What's the timetable going to look like? And what's the thinking amongst, those very important people that you're one of and around on a daily basis about how you run a school and maintain social distance and do all the things that you need to do to reopen and function differently? What are they saying about timeline,
I'll be right
about
back.
function, about operation, about how it's going to work?
They really, we don't have a lot of guidance on it, just very honestly. I mean, it's not like there's a collaborative process on this issue. We've given the governor a tremendous amount of power. We gave him legislatively the power to basically set policies, supersede laws. Some people didn't think it was right. I thought it was necessary, even though it's challenging. So it's not like there's a collaborative process. I do weigh in with the governor's education people, and I hear particularly from superintendents about the challenges. For example, like you're talking about distance learning, spacing when school begins, what is going to be required of them. I think we've never been through this before, so it's not like there's an expert path to follow. We are really going to have to figure out how to do it most safely. I mean, in a perfect world for me, I think, it would be nice if school started again in September and not before, so that we could truly plan wisely. But I don't know whether the governor will go along with that.
Is there any talk about maybe having split sessions?
Yes, I have heard that. Yes, I have heard split sessions. Some schools have that. Where you remember in the old days in New York City, they had many split session high schools. But I think that could be. I think the governor could require some summer traditional school. That's a possibility.
Like to catch up,
Yeah,
on work.
There are kids who, with distance learning, are not doing probably well enough to easily move to the next grade in the lower grades. And how are we going to deal with that? And then there's a range of issues about testing, and we canceled the test, but not every child is going to be ready to move ahead, no matter what. And so I think there could be split sessions. There could be some summer makeup learning. There could be continued virtual learning for some students who are capable. I think it's really going to take a new view to come up with the right mix. I don't know what it is.
Can I want to get one more question in real quick. Real quick.
Go ahead, Bob.
Graduations.
Bob is getting the cut.
Thank you. I just wanted to piggyback. I'm sorry. So,
No, I didn't mean to cut AJ. He's the host. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, AJ. Thank you.
Well, I know we have a time limit. You know, I know she doesn't. We asked her for an hour, and that's almost coming up. So I want to get as much in as possible because I don't know if she has extra time. So
I have a few minutes, but then I gotta go deal
So-
with stuff.
So the onset of the coronavirus has hastened the decline of the retail sector and the commercial real estate industry.
Yep.
And one of the things that I was thinking as I was sort of brainstorming about creative solutions as to whether or not some of the space that's now becoming vacant in a lot of our local retail settings might serve as a kind of temporary classrooms that could reduce some of the high concentrations of students at the same time that it might help to pad some of the revenue that the large, the owners of these retail buildings are likely to lose as businesses essentially go into bankruptcy and fold.
Yeah.
And rental revenues are lost. I know it's not possible to answer now. It's more in the way of a suggestion perhaps you and your colleagues can consider when you are mulling over ways to address this.
Hopefully go back to Albany. Yes, AJ,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
well, I know one of the things I know you was talking about. I guess y'all were talking about when the kids go back to school. I think that's what y'all
Yes.
talking about when I walk back in. One of the things I've got a lot of calls and a lot of people are concerned about the graduations. I know on the college level, there's some places that have canceled graduation period. And I don't know, the kids when kids do the right thing and they go through the whole process and then now it's that time to graduate, which is a really big deal, especially in our community where a lot of people might not graduate. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
to cancel this, do you have any thoughts on the state level? Is that something y'all are discussing? That
Yeah, well, I think I am very concerned about it. As a parent, I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent. I know how important it is. And I know in districts like, in Yonkers all those years, in Mount Vernon and in, so many districts, everywhere, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to graduate from high school. It's one of those transformative moments. I think there's two things. We may not be able to have the physical graduation the way we always had it. Maybe we can do it with the social distancing. On the other hand, I've talked to high school students in White Plains. I did another few schools where, unfortunately, this is a moment for high school students also to have to sort of step up and say, the world is bigger than my own thing. I was looking forward to this. I bought my dress. I missed the prom. But you know what? We're in a crisis and you're going to have to do your part. And as unfortunate, disappointing it is, it may require you to exert additional maturity than you might have planned. And I think many 17-year-olds can step up into that, not all. I hope we can do some celebrating. They deserve it, and it's the right thing to do, and I'm all for it if we can do it safely. But I do not want to jeopardize the health. We've so far stayed away from young people dying on the whole, and let's keep it away from them.
Right. Last words. Are there anything I didn't ask you? Any information that you want to get out to your district? To the people listening? As far as Corona or anything, any updates or?
First of all, thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be back. I'm happy to come at any time. Thank you for the very thoughtful questions and the heated exchanges. This is all good. That's the best thing about democracy. I'm a big believer that is good. And we should have more of it, and people should, and not everything is personal and not everything is an attack. That's how we learn from each other and listen. And that's the way I've tried to conduct myself. I have many people who I think disagree with some of my ideas, but truthfully believe that my heart is in it for the reasons that I believe government can make a difference. This is a moment where I think government will make a difference. And we have to work together. Sometimes you have to do things that other people may disagree with, but I feel very, very honored in this very tough moment to be someone who has the responsibility to have this elected job, and I take it seriously. I have a wonderful colleague and friend in Andrea and my other Democratic colleagues, and many of my Republican colleagues in the Senate and the Assembly. And New York State really has its hands full, and we're going to do our very best to address it head on and work with the governor in a collaborative way. So I just want to thank you. I look forward to being back. Thank you for all your good questions, for your comments on the side, and I hope everyone stays safe and well.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
For anybody want to get in touch with your office or anything?
Yes. So my office is closed, but we answer emails and answer phone calls. My number is 914-934-5250. I'll give it to you. You can put it online. And
Right.
email is smayer, M-A-Y-E-R, @nysenate.gov. And we answer all the emails. We call back everybody. I call as many as I can, and my staff helps me to try to reach every person.
And as I told you before, when you came, it's an open door. Whenever you need us, let us know. Hopefully we'll get to a point where we can actually get back in the studio and I can see you sitting across from me.
Yeah, we'll get there.
It's definitely a new normal. I applaud all of y'all that are working on whatever the levels that y'all are working on, because it cannot be easy, because we're navigating through uncharted waters. With job loss going back worse than 2008, I think I just heard something, and now I was just reading something. The new epicenter is the Northeast Bronx, which leads up into Yonkers and Mount Vernon. So I'm very concerned about that. And small business. Oh, one last thing. Someone asked earlier about, I don't know if it was about unemployment or the small business. They said that they tried to get online and they couldn't get there. They said you try to call and nobody's answering. What is the best way to apply to go about that?
To apply for the PPP, the Small Business Grants, you should go to the U.S. Small Business Administration website and apply it and look at the process. You have to find a bank, basically, that's an SBA participant. But most of the big banks are. There also are some changes in the last bill to make it easier for smaller companies that don't have a big relationship with the bank, maybe with a credit union, to have opportunity. But if somebody has a problem, feel free to call. We will try to intervene to try to be helpful. Can't guarantee, but we will try.
And is there anything to help small businesses where I know there were companies like Roof Chris, the steakhouse, they ended up returning that money, and a lot of big people that didn't need it. I mean, well, not that they didn't need it, but they could survive without it. Is there any protection to get it to the companies that actually need it?
So this next stimulus that just passed that the president signed, you are describing the prior one. This new one is intended to address some of those problems of the Ruth Chris kind of problem that you described, and to make it easier for small businesses to actually get it. And we will continue to push for real relief that makes a difference to small businesses and not have the money go to the people at the top of the pile, but it really should be based on what people need to survive. So we're going to continue to push that, and should be slightly better. It should be better.
Yeah. Also, I read that in one of these programs, and I'm not sure whether it's that PPP fund or a different one. I think the Federal Reserve agreed to announce who the recipients are going to be in the future disbursements.
Because that was one of my big complaints. You applied, you don't know if your actual application went to the SBA and whether it was funded. So if they do that, that would be a huge benefit, and we need more of that. So we're going to keep. Again, if people have problems with their small business loan applications, even though it's federal, feel free to call my office. We will work with the Congress member's office to see if we can be helpful.
Okay. That's it. Any last words?
We're 4 people sitting here and are incredibly fortunate to be healthy tonight. And
yes.
This is a time when all of us now know someone whose family member has died or someone who has died. we really have to listen to the science, to keep ourselves separate as you have, to be patient, to be mature. There's a bigger thing here than what is comfortable and what is easy, and that is we have to sacrifice so that our state is safer and that people don't die. And I think we're all very committed to it. But tonight, we should be thankful we're sitting here healthy and well.
Absolutely. And once again, I want to thank you for your time
My
and
pleasure.
taking the time to come and make the time to speak to the people in our audience. And hopefully, like I said, we'll get to do this in the studio in the near future.
I'd love to. And AJ, I left a charades online with my grandchildren to do.
You should definitely go back to that.
Yeah,
It's much more fun.
it'll be a heavy price to pay if you don't return soon.
A Zoom charades. I didn't know there was such a thing, but I learned that tonight. Thank you again.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
For your time, Senator.
Thank you
you,
very
Senator.
much for your time.
Bye bye.
right.
Thanks again. I'll see you later.
Uh, uh,
That was very
So,
interesting, AJ. Yeah.
I'm sorry that I was looking at a lot of questions and I was looking at the time and I knew that we asked for an hour of her time, and you know what I'm saying? I was trying to
Yeah.
be respectful
No,
of that.
I really appreciate that
and-
she spent
and-
an hour with us.
Right. And it was just, I had like 25 other questions. People were leaving comments and texting me questions that I couldn't get to. And I apologize to anybody's questions we couldn't get to. I tried to get the most bang out of the buck. I knew the two of you were going to be heavy in the education, but I didn't want that to just be the whole conversation because, there were, coronavirus type related questions as well. So this is
I think it's all interlinked. I think it's all linked, and I think that the senator did a good job of linking those two issues and responding to what Bob was talking about, what I was talking about, because the issues are very tightly commingled. There's a crisis. There was a crisis before the pandemic. Now there's a health pandemic, and the question is, what does it look like as we grapple with these kinds of issues? If you're Shelley Mayor, you've got an enormous number of competing interests looking for a solution. Small businesses,
Right.
people with health problems, education, this, that, the other. The state itself is going bankrupt. She's got to deliver a budget. What's their deadline? I think it was it April 1st was their deadline? They have a deadline on their budget. Maybe it's April 30th. I can't recall. But, so there's competing problems, and they're all very demanding. They're all very complicated. And it was interesting to hear her say that there is some appetite for some type of a transformation. We'll have to see.
I also want to say, I think one of the things that was instructive about our discussion is the way in which it implicates deeper philosophical debates about the role of government in our society, as evinced by our exchange, Charles, because I think it's important that we not just look at the policy choices before us in a rather narrow way, but to recognize that there may be deeper, more fundamental questions that we're going to have to grapple with. Although, principled people can have reasonable disagreements. And certainly I wanted to say to you, Charles, that I appreciate you being such a good sport, even when I become a little overexcited. I think AJ likes it when I...
Well, I think it's good.
No. I also think, but listen, I mean, everything you said was eminently rational, Bob. I hear you. We see the world through different lenses, and the only way we're going to know what the other guy's thinking is to, talk about these things. But here's something that I think it must be difficult to be in Senator Mayer's shoes, because the inescapable, snarling reality is government has failed us. It has failed all of us, and it has failed some of us worse than others, but it has failed. And when you're talking about 100-year pandemic that everybody knew was possible, that everybody knew was coming, that previous administrations, Republican and Democrat, tried to do something about, and then we have a complete leadership crisis at the highest levels in Washington, and you have this mess on our hands. I'm amazed people aren't angrier than they are. And so if you're Shelley Mayer, you must be getting the diesel blast of a lot of people who are pretty upset and disappointed with, what government has been able to accomplish to this point.
I mean, I also want to say that it's important for us to note that not only has government in many respects failed us, but also the private sector has failed us as well. Even though we continue to place a great deal of faith in the power of the invisible hand to figure out how to best fulfill societal needs. What this particular moment of crisis has highlighted for us and drawn in very sharp relief is that when we allow people, businesses, and individuals to pursue their own narrowly defined self-interest, what may get lost in the shuffle is the common good. And I think the need for some sort of coordinated response is very clear. And I have to say that I think one of the reasons that government has failed us, to be quite honest, is because that has been the will of the Republican Party above all else.
Well, I got one for you. Here's a simple example of what you're talking about. Bob Iger, CEO of Disney.
Right.
Last year, he made $65 million. Now that compensation consisted of stock appreciation, stock grants, cash, all sorts of, things make up $65 million. He laid off 11,000 people during the pandemic.
See, and that's the thing, I mean.
So, we have a regulatory system that not only allows it, it rewards it.
Right. I mean, and it's important for us to now have discussions that place these issues in a larger historical framework, because one of the important changes that has occurred over the past 50 or so years is a shift from, I think, what the economic historian, I think Alfred Ball, in his Visible Hand of the Market called from a shift to sort of shareholder capitalism, where the preeminent concern that overrides all business decisions is maximizing on the profits of shareholders. And it's responsible for a lot of the short-mindedness that we've seen. So it's an opportunity to revisit these things. I mean, obviously, I speak as, I don't want to say a doctrinaire leftist, but, Charles, I do voice the position of the left in many regards. And so I would like to see a reordering of the relationship between the economy and the state, so that state has more power to regulate economic activities in ways that have been curtailed since the Reagan Revolution of the 1980s. I think it's very important.
And so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to.
That's fine.
I'm not trying to equate opinions or validate whether I agree with every single thing you're saying. Do you think that this is going to be that moment?
What I think is that we find ourselves in a Herbert Hooverian moment where free market ideology continues to shape the political imagination, and that unfortunately we're going to have a failure of the kind that preceded the Great Depression, when the Republican Party under the leadership of Herbert Hoover sort of dithered and refused to take that activist role that allowed capitalism to reform itself and to save itself. If we do not have a more vigorous response, the capitalist system can't hold up if we have massive unemployment. So, and our political order, for that matter, will not hold. And I'm very deeply concerned, especially because of the strength and ferocity of right-wing movements here in the United States that have taken to the streets to sort of engage in a display of ritual terror by brandishing weapons, not only heavily armed with machine guns and military style weaponry, but in addition, people have been out there with grenade launchers and stuff. This is crazy. It is crazy, and I am sympathetic, because I know everyone has to eat. I've been very fortunate thus far. because I still am employed, but I wasn't so much plugging for me. There are others, primary, secondary school teachers. So we do have to consider, Charles, or else I'm not very hopeful where this thing is going to take us.
Let me ask you a question, both of you, briefly. How do you feel this coronavirus pandemic is going to affect the election, especially the primaries coming up, the presidential primary and the Democratic primary? They're coming up in June. What do you foresee as we may not be to a point where we're still social distancing at that point. Like,
well,
we're not
I have
opening
a couple
things
of
back up.
thoughts. I have a couple of thoughts on that. And I don't know whether either one of you caught the video that I did last week about how to request an absentee ballot. But this
Yeah,
story
we posted. We did a story, a whole story. Shout out to County Legislator Ruth Water. She actually spelled it all out, how to apply for it and what to do, and we posted it on Black Westchester.
So there's news. As of Friday, something changed, which is the governor in his Friday in his daily address at Friday in the middle of the day announced that what's going to happen is that you will not need to request an application for an absentee ballot. One will be sent to every single registered voter in the state of New York, and it will contain a self-addressed stamped envelope to return the application to your county board of elections. So they're coming as close, the governor, by executive order, using the governor's directive, is getting as close as he possibly can to creating a vote by mail system specifically for June 23rd. And you asked, do I think that it's going to impact elections?
Well, how's it going to? Yeah.
I don't think it's going to impact the presidential primary because Biden's going to win in New York. I do think that vote by mail, ubiquitous, everybody gets an absentee ballot application. I think that could have an impact on congressional races. I do. And I think it could potentially have an impact on some state Senate and Assembly, so state legislature races, because you're going to be as close as you can get to putting a ballot in every single person's hand. That's about as close as we're ever going to get. It's never going to be easier to vote in a New York State primary than it's going to be on June 23rd. Mm-hmm. Not only does everyone have an excuse for an absentee ballot, every single person is being mailed an absentee ballot application with a stamp on it. Wow. So I think a lot more people are going to vote.
A bigger turnout is something a lot of Republicans fear, and some Democrats in power fear. They count on the smaller turnout, and a larger turnout is something that has benefited the Democrats, and
it benefits
and also
incumbents love a small voter turnout.
Yeah, and then you're talking about all the millennials, which I think Bob did some research. The 18 to 25 is one of the smallest voting, like the voting turnout in the last few elections. They've had the smallest turnout. Now all of them will have this in their hand, and they don't even have to go nowhere. That could possibly lead to a much bigger turnout in that age group, which I think would make a big difference, in the elections.
I think so too. Like that article that was in Black Westchester and the video that I did last weekend, it basically stepped through the same procedure. You got to go to the website. You have to download the application. You have to fill out the application. You have to know which boxes to check. Then you have to find out the address of the county board of elections in your county, and you have to fill in the address, find a stamp, shove it in an envelope, and send it. All that is gone. It's gone. They're going to send out an absentee ballot application to every single voter, every person registered to vote at their voter registration address. Now, not everybody actually lives where they are registered to vote, but nevertheless, everybody's going to get an absentee ballot application. it should greatly increase the number of people that participate in the primary, and I think that could impact state legislature races.
Bob, your
We'll
thoughts?
have to see.
Yeah, in terms of the internal dynamics of the New York State Democratic Party, I do think that the liberalization of the voting procedures is likely to redound to the benefit of more progressive candidates, although I don't know it's going to be sufficient to allow them to, for example, some of the more progressive candidates that I support in the race, for example, for Congressman Elliot Engel's seat is going to be sufficient to unseat him. He still does have incumbents, and mainstream incumbents still do have a tremendous advantage, although this is an historic opportunity to remove them and perhaps shift the New York State Democratic Party, the statewide party, and the congressional caucus in a more progressive direction. But it remains to be seen. I mean, that's speculative. Maybe that's hopeful on my part. I think, you've already alluded to this, AJ, and and Charles has also reemphasized that. You know what? The reforms that Governor Cuomo has initiated through executive order are not likely to be duplicated elsewhere. If anything, news reports suggest that Republicans in other states that are solidly red are doing their damnedest to make sure that we do not see any kind of mail-in.
Like Wisconsin, what was that? Wisconsin? What was that? Wisconsin? What they made the
They forced everyone to go out. I have to say I was
Disgrace. It's a disgrace.
It was a disgrace. You heard the president express his objections to widespread adoption of mail-in procedures on the claim, the unsubstantiated claim, I think baseless claim actually, that somehow or the other it's more ripe for corruption and misdeeds. But
it's not. And it's, by the way, that's yet another example of the president talking out of his you-know-what, because there's no empirical evidence that that's true. And in fact, that there's states in the Northwest, I understand, that rely very heavily on mail voting, and their results are consistent, accurate. It's not a problem.
Well, the president never left actually in the way of.
I want to say that really the response of the Republican Party to the challenge of voting in the upcoming election underscores just how fundamentally anti-democratic they are.
Well, we saw that in the midterm elections with Stacey Abrams in Georgia. It was a major
that was a theft. That was a theft.
Right.
Major voter suppression.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and although they are quick to hurl the accusation of voter tampering, at the ballot box at Democrats, the reality is that the empirical record shows that Republicans are far more likely to engage in either some sort of legal administrative manipulation of the process, or even in some cases, this kind of, what was that? Vote when you gather up all the votes. I forgot the term that's used. But in any case, the only instance that we have in recent history of this is a Republican operative who was found guilty of this kind of voter aggregating of absentee ballots.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. You're talking about voter fraud, where you get 5 absentee ballots and you fill them out for other people. Let me tell you something. If anyone listening is even thinking of doing something like that, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a judge, but I am pretty sure that there is a very cold upstate New York prison cell waiting for you if you get caught tampering with an absentee ballot. I wouldn't touch it.
Right.
Just so you know, so we I got a text just now from Greenberg Superintendent Dr. Tahir Dupree Chase. She said, "Excellent show, guys. Excellent show."
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm closing. In last remarks, anything that you also might wanted to address that's going on other than what we spoke on In these last
I
minutes?
guess the only thought that I had was off of something Bob said. With this mail vote June 23rd thing, keep your eye on the congressional races. Congressional District 2, Congressional District 15 in the Bronx, Congressional District 17, which is Westchester and Rockland, because those are open seats.
Okay.
And there isn't a superstar running
Well,
in any of them.
17 is Neil Louis seat right now.
Correct. Yes.
And
Yes.
there's so I covered a little bit of that in this issue of the paper. We had 3 of the candidates that had to cancel their interviews because of the studio closing, and we're going to start doing those next week. We'll have Evelyn Farkas on next week.
Right.
And Allison Fine is the name, Allison Fine, and Catherine Parker, I believe. We're locking them in the next couple of weeks. Those 3 got canceled. We did Mondeir Jones and Asha Castleberry Hernandez, but some of the other ones that got canceled, and we'll be picking those up starting next week. We got Evelyn on next week, so we're following that race. We're following that race heavily.
I wanted to say, AJ, that the sort of national debate that we're having about the relative role of the government-private sector and an inability to really resolve it in ways that will allow us to address this crisis in an effective manner is a reminder that there is also civil society itself. And we don't have to necessarily work through our government or corporations in order to begin to address some of these problems ourselves using our own resources. This gives me an opportunity, as a good leftist, there is an emphasis on the need for autonomous kind of programs to address some of these. And one of the discussions that we've been having that we're going to continue on Saturday at 11 o'clock is the community gardening movement, which
Nice.
Seems to be more. There's a greater recognition of the need for this than ever. And so we'll be having Brother Jeff Moreau is going to be on, Damon, who has been a very heavy proponent of, changes in diet and lifestyle as one way of dealing with some of the challenges related to coronavirus. So we want to invite everyone to join us at 11 a.m. on Saturday morning to continue that discussion. And actually, we may, if we're fortunate, have some guests on who will have some programmatic suggestions about how to approach, the reinvigoration of our community garden movement, because they've been involved in it for some time. So that's my closing.
Community gardens are awesome. In fact, the charter school, Amani Public Charter Schools, had a community garden for the last several years. It used to be next to the firehouse, South 7th Ave.
Okay, right.
It was there for a while, but then more recently, they've had a community garden outside the YMCA, which is behind the YMCA, which is down the street from the school.
We mentioned that in the last show. So, Charles, it sounds, I don't know if you or your wife or, want to join us and, share your experiences with us, but, we're.
When is the show?
It's going to be Saturday at 11, tentatively.
Nice.
Saturday at 11.
Nice. Well, hey guys, before time runs out, I just wanted to say thank you for having me as a guest host on here today. It's always a pleasure. As I like to say, when I get that call, it's the social height of my weekend. So thank you.
Especially now. When all we do is talk to one another video.
I appreciate that. I also just want to again shout out Lorraine for the move, what she did with for the undocumented, getting tested and bringing that point to the forefront on Facebook, and Sandy Barnaby for email blasting it out. And for her, she got all the elected officials basically from the state down to respond to her. And even Shelley said, her and Andrea were talking about it. And, so she lit a fire under, addressing an issue that was very important, especially in the city of Yonkers, where there was a lot of undocumented. And I think everyone needs to be tested, and we can't, before people get into this whole if undocumented people are not tested, that endangers all of our lives.
It's a very simple thing. AJ, the virus doesn't care. The virus doesn't care whether you're documented, undocumented, whether you're white or you're black or you're old. By the way, young people are getting sick. A few of them are dying also. So the virus doesn't care. So you gotta find a way to get past some of these social issues and straighten it out so everybody has access.
I want to definitely shout out the healthcare workers. Tammy, who lives here at the house, whose house it is, she works in Northern Westchester. The stories that she comes home with night after night. What we see on the news, what they have to deal with up close and personal is a whole nother level. And it's an emotional, I've seen her come in physically drained and emotionally drained, and then you got to get up and go do the same thing the next day. And it's a lot of them, they're putting their life on the line to make us safer, to care for the people, to do what needs to be done. And then we was already talking about the nursing homes, the danger of these nursing homes. And I want to shout out Damon and all the correction officers, because correction officers, are right now, they're all locked in the same building. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and let me just clear. So people want to be incarcerated. It's not the incarcerated bringing it in, since they've been in jail since before this corona thing.
Well, that's a good point.
It's the correction officers it's the employees that are going in and out. So it's not,
right.
they didn't bring this in. So, but and then, I've heard stories of, just the treatment and just all the frontline workers, police, fire, emergency, the Uber drivers, the delivery persons, and Bob, we was talking, Tracy's daughter works at Stop and Shop, the work on the registers. I really want to give an extra shout to all of them, especially the healthcare workers, and for all the praying people out there, continue to keep them in your prayers, because they need it. And it's a scare for the healthcare workers. When they leave, they have to change their clothes before they can walk in the house, because they don't want to bring anything into the house to their family. And I've seen some where they're saying they're already staying in a separate room, different than, the rest of the family, because, they're in close proximity to this. You hope you don't have it, but you don't know. And, they got the asymptomatic people walking around, showing those signs, and they're spreading it. So, just follow the social distancing, the washing of your hands, and for the mask thing, because I've been looking at the whole debate on the mask thing. The mask does not protect me from you. The mask actually protects you from me if I have it. If I have a mask, if I don't have a mask and I cough or sneeze or whatever, and I have it, I endanger all of you. The mask
100%.
helps keep that.
100%.
The mask helps contain some of that. So the mask does not protect me from you. It protects you from me if I have it. And so understand. So we need to and they're showing the bandanas, just covering of the face, period, some kind of face covering.
Yeah. Although I heard today, I heard something new about that today. So what you said is 100% what I've heard before, which is masks protect everybody else from the person that's wearing the mask.
Right.
But I heard something new today, which is apparently there's some research that the COVID-19 virus can survive in the emissions of factories. So like if you have a smokestack and particulate matter is pushed out into the atmosphere, apparently because it's warm and it's moist, it can last a long time and it can travel very long distances. So the mask may, in some circumstances, actually protect the individual wearing the mask also. So wear masks. That is just like going to become Like
Well,
it's like everybody puts on underwear every day. Now you got to put on a mask. It's just a part of the
if
outfit.
we do have some kind of opening up of the
Hey, look,
system where we actually going out more, you're still going to have some sort of social distancing, and you're going to be required. And shout out to the stores that even the little bodega on the corner of Sanford and Fifth, there's a sign saying no mask, no service. Like you're not even walking
Good.
in.
That's good.
And
I'm
that
glad to hear
and,
it.
and
Yeah.
I'm you know, even Cupcake Cutie got that sign on their window too. Like, you know, so you know, and you know, you just got to watch the people that are, you know, be careful of the people that's not wearing any mask. Especially if they delivering your food and stuff, they got no mask and no gloves on. You should be concerned about that.
Well, I'll tell you a quick story. Quick story. I went to Home Depot the other day to pick something. I ordered something online, went to Home Depot to go pick it up. They have an area in the parking lot set aside for what do they call it? Drive up pickups.
Right.
And the young lady who brought out the stuff, I placed the phone call when I got to the parking space, and they said, okay, order number XYZ. We'll be right there. Lady comes out with a cart with my stuff. She wasn't wearing a mask. She wasn't wearing gloves. And it kind of surprised me a little bit. But that's just reality. That's the reality of this situation.
right.
Bothered me.
I want to say in Charles's discomfort with the fact that she didn't have on a mask, I think is one reason why we need to be considerate of those around us who we share this world with, we're sharing social space with, just to put them at ease, even though we may feel that it is an extreme measure and it's unnecessary, just to make other people feel comfortable. It's okay to take into consideration other folks, their needs and concerns, so that we can have a modicum of civil interactions, and so people don't have to begin to shy away. In some instances, some folks are going to be upset, and I think rightly so. I have to say, yesterday I was out in my car, and I drove up the Sawmill River Parkway, and I was a little surprised to see. I knew that people were eager to get out because it was the first warm day of spring. That was no surprise. I know everyone has been cooped up. People are suffering from cabin fever. But I was really surprised to see the number of people who were on the trail, because I often travel along the Sawmill River, the number of people who were out trying to, you know, get some sun and a little bit of physical, you know, exercise. But the number of people who did not have on masks and were clearly walking.
Plenty people.
And I'm like, what in the heck is going on, man?
Yeah.
You know, come on. So I want to urge everyone to. I know I really try to. I may walk from my car, from my front door to my car without a mask on because I live on a very sparsely populated block. But, you know, after that, the mask is on. And if anyone is outside, you know, I'm putting on my mask. So I really hope that we're all a little bit more vigilant.
It has to be that way.
Absolutely. So we just have to be more considerate. And I just want to say, so all of y'all people who were saying that if you come from New York and you come to their states, you have to be quarantined. For all of your states that's trying to open up right now, stay the hell out of New York. Because there's all new states opening up right now. I'm just saying, for your states that's opening up and you go to barbershops and all that, stay the hell out of New York. That's all I have to say.
AJ, I 100% agree. I 100% agree. So I got a friend who lives in Alpharetta, Georgia. You know, I know you know where that is.
Right.
Suburbs of Atlanta. So I called my friend. Right. I think Alpharetta is like maybe 45 to an hour outside of the center of the city. So I called my friend and I said, look, your governor is a moron. Okay. You got to stay inside your house and continue with this thing, regardless of what you unfortunately have to have this mentality that your governor does not have your best interest, because I'm telling you, I reside in an area that's been adversely affected by this thing. It's unbelievably contagious. People get sick, and everybody I know knows someone who has died at this point. So you got to ignore your governor. You got to stay inside, and you got to stay out of it.
One more thing about the importance of voting. This guy shouldn't be in there, period. This guy should have never won that election.
Oh, right, absolutely.
But yeah, he should have
Absolutely.
never won that election. So
Right, terrible, terrible.
now that he's in there, he's doing stupid stuff like this. And even the mayor, I seen the mayor of
Well,
Savannah, and he was like, "No, we're not doing that here." He's like, "Savannah, we're not doing that here."
well, this whole thing, Donald Trump on down, it just brings into sharper focus why it's so important who you elect. It really matters because you might find yourself in a crisis situation. And if the person that you voted for or the person that got elected is a clown, heaven help you. There's nothing you can do.
Last words. Last words. We wrapping it up. Last words.
No, I'll just say, AJ and Charles, it's always a pleasure joining you guys on air. And I'll say especially Charles, I'm always with AJ on air, but I like it when you join us on air because you're a wealth, a treasure trove of knowledge and very
Thank you.
sophisticated kind of philosophical view on all these matters, and so we really appreciate it. It keeps us in honest dialogue with one another. So
Well, likewise, thank you for the verbal bouquet, Bob, and same to you. It's a pleasure. I enjoy and I find it an intellectual, positive experience to spend a little time with you guys. So thank you again.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been episode 259 of the People Before Politics radio show, the online edition. We want to just thank everybody for tuning in, everybody who's watching this, everybody who's going to watch this later. It will be up in the next day or two on blackwestchester.com. Stay tuned to blackwestchester.com for updates on testing sites and all the vital information that y'all are looking for. We're working with the elected officials and everything we can get. We're putting out as soon as we get it. So stay tuned to blackwestchester.com. Check out all the stories. There's some stories y'all missed before. Like, go through the site. You got plenty of time on your hands for all of y'all that are sitting in the house all day. So check out the site. Check out the previous shows. Check us out. We'll be on a few times during the week, sporadically at 11 a.m. for the Black Westchester Power Hour. Whenever we have some issue to discuss, and Damon's going to be doing the Saturday thing. For the plant-based thing on Saturdays at 11. So check that out. I posted something on my Instagram page, and I just want that to be my closing words. Save lives. Stay home. The life you save just might be your own.
Amen.
And with that,
Great message.
I do want to just give a shout to all the people that we know personally. A lot of our friends tune in. They've been longtime supporters, activist organizers that we, do work with. We want to just, it's good to see y'all. I want to encourage y'all, especially like my brother Ken Bright and others who are out there on the front lines trying to serve the residents of Mount Vernon at a time of immense need. And so, even though we haven't been able to see you guys.
Shout to Ken Bright. I just definitely want to say that I'm watching everything that you're doing on Facebook. You're serving a necessary service for the people that just need. You're getting the food and the fruits and the vegetables or whatever, to people that just don't have it. I appreciate the work you do.
Absolutely.
So it's very, very important. We need more people like you out there in the community. Shout out to you. Shout out to everybody who tuned in. Cookie Alexander Campbell, Uncle Frank Trolio Jr., Luis Cherico, Ken Bright, Crystal Cromarty. I just screwed up your name, I'm sure. Shanice Coleman, she said, "Hi, guys." Jeff Monroe, he said he had a bunch of comments, but one of the last ones was represent Dr. Bob, represent. Clifton Earl Abrams Greenberg, Justin Brash, Brenda L. Crump, Dr. Tahir Dupree Chase, Greenberg Superintendent, Gail Baxter from Yonkers, Barry McGooey, the head of the fire union in Yonkers, Oh, Charles, I want to say thank you for it was comments I couldn't get to, and I saw that you answered them and you filled in. You answered the questions that were coming up. I appreciate that. Marvin Church tuned in for a few. Let's see. Anybody else? Carmen Gomez Goldberg in Yonkers. Atif Khalil. Keep doing what you're doing. Dawn Seawright. Brandy Nichols in Yonkers, Alex Harrison, there's a few others. I saw Shonda Nesbitt Fair, and Larry Fair, the Future Society. What's going on? We have to catch up. I need to talk to y'all soon. Jeff Monroe Simmons, I believe he had a birthday recently. Happy birthday, everybody who celebrated a birthday. Keith Nixon, Harry William Lawson III, and I may have missed several people because I'm reading from one of the pages. If you were watching Nicole Jones, if you're watching on one of the other pages, then I might have missed you. But we want to thank everybody for tuning in. You could be doing anything else, but you decided to ride with us. We greatly appreciate it. This is Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show. Even though we're not in the studio, we're still going to come to you every Sunday, 6 to 8. Well, not on In the Mix Radio. We're on Facebook right now, Facebook Live. But we appreciate it. Next week we have Evelyn Farkas from running in that New York 17 congressional district race. We'll be talking to her for about an hour, interviewing her, and then we're going to get the other candidates, Allison Fine and Catherine Parker, and a couple of others that reached out. We're going to get all of them on as soon as possible. So I just want to thank everybody tuning in. Yo, wash them hands, man. Stay in the house if you can. Stay away from everybody. And, my condolences to everybody who's been affected and lost somebody. There's too many people that I know personally to name everybody, but you all know who you are, and all the ones I don't know, just anybody who's felt any loss because of this. My hat goes off to all of you. And again, shout my hat off to all the healthcare workers and first responders. I can't say that enough for what y'all do. That's it. Until next week. Peace.
2 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new politically mature. And
what the hell?
Political election. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And I'm not afraid to say it. And I'm not afraid to say it.